Hospitality can go wrong in a multitude of ways. Two of them, someone can argue with you when you're right, or they can rush you when you're exhausted. Now, I've had the good fortune of encountering both. What happens when hospitality stops feeling like care and starts feeling like insistence? Welcome to this week's episode of Unhospitality.
Unhospitality, the #1 podcast in the world.
I'm sure we've all had hospitality moments that were disappointing, awkward, even funny. Today, I'll share two incidents from my travels that stood out because both times the message was the same. Your comfort, Jeremy, is not our priority. And of course, the comfort of the guest is the essence of hospitality. Before we go any further, guys, I really appreciate your support. Please do me the solid of liking, subscribing, commenting, even give us a review on some of your favorite platforms. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast, you'll find Unhospitality. Appreciate the support. So let me set the scene. I was traveling to Frankfurt, Germany for a conference there. Everyone knows IMEX Europe. You'll know that it's held every year in Frankfurt, Germany. Now, I was traveling with the hotel group that I do business with. They host you and they bring you to this conference so you can get to know their hotels and obviously meet with hotels and destinations from around the world, all with the purpose of learning more about the hotels, more about the destinations, and recommending them to my clients so that I can bring them future business, right? So in this particular trip, they had a FAM trip or a familiarization trip to Spain. So we were lucky enough to visit Barcelona in a beautiful, absolutely charming city called Sitges, which is just south of the Barcelona airport. In fact, it takes less time to get to Sitges than it actually takes to get to the center of Barcelona from the Barcelona airport. It was an old fishing town that's converted into an absolute gem of a tourism spot. We were leaving Spain to go to Frankfurt, and for weather-related reasons, we took off out of Barcelona, but we could not land in Frankfurt. We had to land about 2 hours away by train at another airport. When we got to that destination and landed, the best and most effective way to get to Frankfurt for our conference that started the next morning was by train. So we're already delayed in getting to the hotel. In fact, what our arrival was supposed to be sometime around 4 o'clock, we ended up getting to the hotel around 11 o'clock at night. So it was a long, long day of travel. Unexpectedly long, in fact. We got to the front desk, and this is the incident I want to highlight as a pure example of unhospitality. What happened? The young lady at the front desk proceeded to collect my information, took my passport, took my credit card for incidentals, and starts to explain to me the policies of the hotel. And along the way, she mentions that breakfast is not included. And I had pretty good information, all of our pre-trip material, the hosted buyer hotel group that was there. Actually, he was traveling with me in part of this group that arrived at the hotel at the same time. All had information that said no, that breakfast was indeed included. And I expressed that to the young lady. I said, I'm sorry, I think there might be a mistake. Very calmly, I believe that breakfast is included in the rate. She looked at her screen. She looked back at me. No, breakfast is not included. I said, let me just check my email here because I think, yeah, look, actually, it says right here that breakfast is included. Looked at her screen, looked back at me. No, breakfast is not included. Now, I'm tired. I'm a little cranky, but I'm keeping it calm. I realize that this agent at the front desk does really not have the authority to say whether breakfast is included or not. And if I have to sort it out with the manager the next day, I can. In fact, what I did at that moment is I turned to the gentleman who's hosting us. Now, he's not with that specific hotel, but he's with the larger brand that oversees that hotel. And I said, hey, I'm being told here that breakfast isn't included. Can you confirm that it is? And as the organizer of the group, he looked at her and explained who he was. And he said, yes, breakfast is absolutely included. She looked at her screen again, went back to her office there in the back, came back out and said, no, breakfast is not included. So at that point, I'm not going to fight it anymore. I really don't care. Honestly, if I have to buy breakfast in the morning, I will. But just the insistence at that point that she was right. There was no pause to say, hey, you know what? There obviously is some confusion here. Allow me to check with my manager, or can you stop by the front desk in the morning and we can sort all this out? There was no pause. There was no humility. Now, I want to try and describe my feelings. I wasn't annoyed, although the temptation was there to be annoyed. I was very tired, like I said, and it was a long day. I was more feeling dismissed at that moment. Like, no matter what evidence I provided to her, instead of caring at that moment, instead of pausing with just a bit of humility and saying, clearly there's something wrong here, um, let's sort this out, she was very dismissive. And I think also what made it a little worse is I wasn't trying to fight her. I wasn't insisting or getting large in that moment. I just calmly explained to her I had different evidence that, explained that breakfast was included, and she wouldn't stop. I wasn't asking for special treatment. I was simply asking for a basic correction based upon very real evidence that I had, not only in my hands, but in the organizer that was there with me as well. In that moment, it was clear good hospitality is not always about being right. Sometimes hospitality fails not because of a big mistake, but because someone refuses to stop, listen, and make a small adjustment. It's about checking and making sure the guest feels respected, even when there's confusion. The issue wasn't the breakfast, it was the basic lack of humility in that moment. Now, my second story takes us back to the Americas. We're in Costa Rica now, and I was there for a very similar event. It was a much smaller event in scope and size. It was about 20 planners and 20 hotels and destinations, and we were matched together to talk about their destinations, get to know them, build relationships, all with the hopes that we would bring business to them in the future. Same exact purpose and same proposition. Now, as part of this trip, not only were we meeting at one specific hotel and having daily meetings, but we were also engaged in tours throughout Costa Rica to see other hotels of various chains, all devised by the Costa Rican CVB, or the Convention and Visitors Bureau. They had invested quite a bit of money for us not to just showcase and deal with the hotels at this conference, but to showcase the country of Costa Rica and to take us to various parts. So on the conference had wrapped up, but we had 2 or 3 days of tours still ahead of us. On the opening day, we had a couple of hours of tours scheduled. Let me just tell you, these couple of hours turned into a nightmare of a tour because between the traffic and the rides that we were going on and the stops that they had us go to, which to be honest had nothing to do with hospitality or with anything that had potential future for our groups, it was a very bizarre selection of destinations that they brought us to, like shopping centers. There was one place that was like a retirement community that was very beautiful, but it had nothing to do with us bringing groups to Costa Rica. So we were all kind of scratching our heads, getting increasingly frustrated as the day went on. And as 2 hours dragged on to six, dragged on to eight in a bus in touring Costa Rica, we were up to here. As beautiful as some of these destinations were, we just had had enough. The final stop of the night was actually the hotel we were staying in that night. And it was in a beautiful resort area in Costa Rica, in Guanacaste. Imagine by the time we arrive, we're all exhausted. No one wanted to go on this tour that we had planned. We barely wanted to eat dinner, which I'm sure was going to be delicious, but we were just like tapping out. Let us get to our rooms and relax. But of course, we know the obligation. We know this is part of the deal. We have to go on this tour. We have to eat the dinner. But here's the sticker, and this is where the moment of truth to showcase hospitality at this time completely broke down. We get to the lobby, everyone is grumpy. And when I'm saying everybody, everybody. It was just an unnecessarily long day for all of us. All we wanted to do before we went on this tour and to go for dinner was to stop for 20 minutes, maybe 30. I know it's getting late. We had obviously arrived to the hotel later than they were expecting us to. But there was a real genuine moment of frustration and exhaustion that if they just let us recuperate for a bit, go up to the room, brush our teeth, wash our faces, come back down, fresh, just as fresh as we can possibly be in that moment for the tour and dinner, we would all have been a lot happier. But that didn't happen. What did happen is the director of sales insisted, I'm sorry, you can't go anywhere. We have to do the tour now. It seemed like we were at the mercy of her schedule. She wanted to get home. She was frustrated that we were late. Believe me, no more frustrated than we were. But she wanted to insist that we had to stick to the schedule. We had to do the tour then, and we had to eat dinner at that moment. Again, at that point, this isn't hospitality anymore. What this is a forced effort to show your hotel. If your entire purpose of bringing us to your hotel is to showcase it and show us warm hospitality for us to trust you with our groups in the future, that insistence completely broke that trust. It was a big fail. And it actually had all of us on the fam trip saying, it'll be a long time before I book a piece of business here. If this is the way you treat us, how will you treat our clients? If your insistence trumps hospitality, will that be the same case when we bring our clients to you? Will you insist you're right or insist on a certain schedule? The choice was obvious. Give us a half an hour, we'd all be better off for it. And they just failed to deliver that. Now, of course, in the grand scheme of life, these are very small problems to have. I'm very fortunate to have been on these trips in the first place, and I was very grateful for the overall effort that was made. But those 2 points of contact right there highlight that in the middle of an overwhelmingly positive trip, an overwhelmingly informative trip, those 2 moments really broke down and made me, at least, less likely to want to bring business to that hotel. Because again, if this is how you're going to treat me when your entire purpose of this trip is to showcase your hospitality, you did a disservice to yourself by being unhospitable. In Germany, the staff member didn't listen. In Costa Rica, the host did not read the room. In both of these cases, the issue was not the script or the plan, it was a failure to adapt to the guest's actual experience. Hospitality is not a performance of an activity. It is about noticing the person in front of you, making them feel seen, making people feel cared for at the exact moment that they need it. What does this mean? Well, this means verifying instead of arguing. It means pausing instead of pushing, and it means giving guests a little grace when they're tired, confused, or just arriving to your hotel after an unnecessarily long day. So these are just two of my stories. I'm sure you have plenty more stories to share. Mention them in the comments. I want to know, is this Germany situation just because of the German mentality of being very rigid and diligent, or did I misread that? Was that something that could happen anywhere? Because I honestly think when we compare cultures between Germany and Costa Rica, pura vida, pure life, I mean, there you would expect them to be a little bit more flexible. And I found the same attitude there where it was just, let's stick to the script and let's not give these guys a break. Want to know your impressions on these cultural differences? Has this happened to you? Like, comment, and join this conversation. I'd really love to hear from you guys. As always, guys, thank you for following along on this journey with me. I'm Jeremy. This is Unhospitality, the #1 podcast in the world. And until next time, safe travels.